Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The evening was unusually quiet as I pulled into my driveway, the sun setting with a calm that belied the chaos about to unfold. The moment I stepped out of my car, a pungent odor assaulted my senses, strong, unmistakable, gasoline. Instantly alert, I followed the scent, my steps quickening as it grew stronger, leading me directly to the garage. The garage door was ajar. I pushed it open, and the scene before me halted my breath. There, amid the shadows and the dull gleam of metal cans, was my wife, Laura. Beside her stood a man I had never seen before, his eyes wild, his presence unsettling. Scattered around their feet were several jerry cans, and in Lara's hand, a lighter that she fumbled with in surprise upon seeing me. "James. You're early," she stammered, her voice a mix of shock and fear. I stared at them, the pieces clicking into place too horrific to comprehend. "Lara, what is this?" My voice was steady, belying the turmoil inside. The stranger shifted, his stance defensive, but my focus remained on Lara. "It's not what it looks like, James. We were just what? Planning a barbecue." I interrupted, my tone icy as I took in the lighter, the cans, his crazed look. It was a setup. It had to be. My own garage reeked of a death trap. The man finally spoke, his voice harsh. "He doesn't need to know anything. Let's just do what we planned." Lara's face went pale, her facade crumbling. "No, Tom, wait." "Tom?" I echoed, my heart racing. "Who the hell is Tom? What were you planning, Lara?" Her eyes filled with tears, a mix of guilt and desperation. "James, please, you have to believe me. I never wanted, it wasn't supposed to be like this." But the truth was as clear as the gasoline fumes in the air. My wife, the woman I trusted, was plotting against me. Not just betrayal, attempted murder. The shock gave way to a cold resolve. "You were planning to kill me. Stage an accident and what? Live happily ever after with Psycho Tom here?" She sobbed, her body shaking. "I thought I wanted out, that this was the only way. But I can't do this. I can't." Ignoring her cries, I turned to Tom, seeing him now for the threat he was. My mind raced, planning my next move. I needed evidence, something to protect myself and to use against them. My phone was in my pocket, and with deliberate calm, I began to record. "Go on, Lara. Tell me everything. How long this has been going on, how you met Tom, how you came up with this plan." As she confessed, her words a torrent of madness and deceit, I knew this was only the beginning. I would ruin her as she planned to ruin me. Legal, thorough, and absolute. Our marriage was over, but my fight was just starting. Walking away from the garage, I left her sobbing on the floor, Tom frozen in indecision. They had underestimated me, and that was their biggest mistake. As the garage door closed behind me, sealing them in their foiled plot, I felt the weight of betrayal hardening into resolve. This was war, and I was already plotting my revenge. As the night deepened, so did the severity of my plans. After leaving Lara and Tom in the garage, I secured myself in my home office, the recording safely uploaded to multiple locations, cloud storage, an email to my attorney, and a backup drive. If they thought they could intimidate or silence me, they were gravely mistaken. I was crafting my counterattack. First, I called Detective Susan Morales, an old friend from college who had made her way into criminal investigations. I explained the situation, my words measured, the evidence undeniable. "Susan, I just caught my wife and some guy trying to set up what looks like an attempted murder. I have it all on tape," I said, my voice a mix of outrage and cold determination. "James, stay where you are. I'm sending a unit over. Don't confront them again," she replied, her tone serious, reflecting the gravity of my situation. While waiting for the police, I drafted an email to my lawyer, attaching the recording and detailing everything. The email was concise, a bullet point list of betrayal, evidence, and a request for the harshest possible legal repercussions. Minutes later, red and blue lights flashed outside my window. I met the officers at the door, leading them to the garage where Lara and Tom were detained. Lara's face was streaked with tears, her earlier defiance replaced by fear. Tom sat beside her, his wild eyes now caged in defeat. Detective Morales arrived shortly after, her expression grim as she listened to the recording. "James, this is solid evidence. We'll take it from here. You did good staying calm and recording everything." Lara was read her rights and handcuffed, her sobs filling the garage. Tom, silent and brooding, followed suit. As they were escorted to the squad cars, Lara's gaze met mine, a silent plea in her eyes. But there was nothing left to salvage. Not after this. With Lara and Tom in custody, my house felt eerily silent. The betrayal was too deep, the breach irreparable. I poured myself a drink, the ice clinking hollowly in the glass, mirroring the emptiness inside me. Each sip was bitter, tainted with the residue of a love turned lethal. My phone rang. It was my lawyer, his voice brisk. "James, I've reviewed your email. We'll go for a restraining order first thing in the morning and start the divorce proceedings. I'll also touch base with the DA about pressing charges based on your evidence." "Thanks, Mark. Make it tight." "She was ready to kill me," I replied, my words clipped. "Will do. We'll make sure she doesn't get a chance to do anything like this again. Stay safe, and call me if you need anything." Hanging up, I realized the long legal battle ahead. But it was a fight I was ready for. Lara had crossed a line that changed everything. Retribution would be mine, through the courts, through every legal channel available. She would pay for her betrayal, and so would Tom. As the sky turned a faint gray, heralding dawn, I felt a resolve stealing within me. This was just the beginning. I would dismantle her world as she tried to end mine. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for war. Morning brought a gray, overcast sky that matched the turmoil in my heart. I hadn't slept, the hours spent replaying the evening's shocking discovery and plotting my next moves. My phone was my constant companion, buzzing with updates from my lawyer and inquiries from concerned friends who had heard about the arrest. Before noon, I was at the courthouse, meeting with my lawyer, Mark, to file the necessary papers for a restraining order and initiate the divorce proceedings. The courthouse was bustling, but the seriousness of my situation seemed to carve out a bubble of silence around me. Mark was methodical, laying out the documents neatly in front of the clerk. "We're filing for an immediate temporary restraining order given the severity of Mrs. Rowland's actions," followed by the divorce petition, he explained to the clerk, his tone professional but firm. "Everything seems in order, Mr. Rowland," the clerk nodded, taking the papers and stamping them with a practiced motion. I leaned in, anxious. "How soon will the judge look at this?" "Given the charges and your evidence, it should be fast-tracked. We could have a decision by tomorrow," Mark reassured me, his gaze steady. After leaving the courthouse, we went to a nearby cafe to strategize further. Over coffee, we discussed the upcoming legal battle. Once the restraining order is in place, it will protect you immediately. For the divorce, considering your wife's attempt on your life, it's likely to sway the terms significantly in your favor, Mark outlined the steps, tapping notes into his laptop. As we talked, my phone vibrated with a call from Detective Morales. I excused myself and answered. "James, we've charged Lara and Tom with conspiracy to commit murder. They're being held without bail until the preliminary hearing." "Thanks, Susan. That's a relief to hear," I replied, the news a cold comfort in the swirling chaos of betrayal. I'll need you to come in and make a formal statement later today. It's crucial for building the case, she added. Understood. I'll be there, I confirmed, feeling the weight of the process but ready to face it head-on. Returning to Mark, I relayed the conversation. He nodded, pleased. Good. Everything's aligning legally. We have momentum, James. Let's use it. The rest of the day was a blur of activity. I gave my formal statement at the police station, detailing everything about the night's events, the planning I had uncovered, and Lara's and Tom's roles in it. The officers were thorough, their questions probing as they took down every detail. Later, back at home, I sat in my living room, the quiet unnerving. The reality of my situation was sinking in. I was soon to be divorced, had narrowly escaped an attempt on my life, and was embroiled in a criminal case against my soon-to-be ex-wife and her accomplice. The magnitude of Lara's betrayal was still hard to comprehend, and revenge seemed both a necessary and hollow pursuit. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, I knew this was just the beginning. I was braced for a drawn-out legal fight, but determined to see it through. Lara had intended to destroy me, but in her failure, she had only steeled my resolve. Retribution would be mine, not through vengeance, but through the gavel of justice. The storm was just beginning, and I was ready for whatever it would bring. The courtroom was suffused with a tense silence as the final hearing of my divorce and the criminal trial against Lara and Tom commenced. I sat rigidly, my eyes fixed on the judge, as the murmur of the assembled spectators gradually subsided. The air was thick with anticipation, and despite the evidence stacked heavily against Lara, a gnawing unease clutched at my stomach. Lara appeared smaller, somehow diminished as she stood beside her lawyer, her eyes avoiding mine. Tom, ever the unpredictable, glared defiantly around the room, his disdain palpable. The proceedings began with the prosecutor outlining the conspiracy with precision, the recorded confession playing once more, echoing grotesquely through the courtroom. As the evidence was presented, murmurs rippled through the room. It seemed a clear-cut case, the outcome inevitable. But just as the prosecutor rested, Lara's lawyer stood, requesting permission to present a new piece of evidence. A tension-filled pause ensued before the judge nodded assent. From a folder, Lara's lawyer produced emails supposedly between me and a private investigator that predated the incident by months. The contents were damning. They suggested that I had known of Lara's infidelity far earlier and had plotted to expose and entrap her in an act that would ensure a favorable divorce settlement for me. The courtroom erupted in whispers and gasps. I stood up, my voice booming, "This is a fabrication. I've never seen these before." Lara finally met my gaze, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling mix of victory and spite. "You wanted revenge, James. But you underestimated me." Her lawyer continued, "Your Honor, we contend that Mr. Rowland's accusations were part of a vengeful plot, twisting an unfortunate misunderstanding about the jerry cans, which were actually for a landscaping project, into an alleged murder attempt." I turned to my lawyer, whispering furiously, "Mark, this is insane. We need to respond." Before Mark could reply, the judge called for order. "We will recess for today. I expect both parties to prepare their final statements for tomorrow." That evening, with my mind racing, I made a decision. If the court wouldn't serve my justice, I would craft my own. I knew Lara had manipulated this evidence, likely forging those emails to save herself. Her deceit had no bounds. The next morning, before the final session, I met Lara outside the courtroom. The early hour meant we were alone in the corridor. "Lara, even if you escape this, you won't win. I know you, perhaps better than you know yourself," I said, my voice low and menacing. Lara smirked, a cold, calculating look in her eyes. "Oh, James. Always so righteous. But you're right about one thing, we are both better at this game than we thought." As we entered the courtroom, I took a moment to steady my resolve. Today would mark the end, one way or another. During my final statement, I presented my own surprise, a series of videos from hidden cameras in our home that I had installed after my initial suspicions of her infidelity months ago. These videos showed Lara and Tom plotting not just any betrayal, but framing me for a crime they intended to commit against a rival of Tom's, using the gasoline as a misdirect. The courtroom fell into stunned silence as the videos played, Lara's and Tom's voices discussing their plan in chilling detail. Lara's face drained of color, her composure finally breaking as she realized her manipulations had unraveled. The judge, after conferring briefly with the court officers, called for an immediate reevaluation of the evidence. In the end, justice swung its swift hammer. Lara and Tom were convicted of conspiracy and attempted incrimination. As for the divorce, it was granted on my terms, favoring my integrity and victimhood in the matter. As Lara was led away, our eyes met one last time, each of us recognizing the depth of deceit and manipulation we had descended into. There was no victory in this outcome, only the bitter remnants of a love destroyed by betrayal. I walked out of the courthouse alone, the weight of the ordeal lifting slightly with each step. The battle was over, but at what cost? My heart was hardened, my belief in trust irreparably shattered. As I looked back one last time, I knew this chapter of my life was closed forever, a stark reminder of the devastating power of betrayal and the ruthless pursuit of retribution.